Hello, thank you so much for coming to this video today. I really appreciate it. This is the Cardano Aura podcast. The Cardano Aura podcast is a podcast that I bring anybody that I feel provides a lot of value to the Cardano ecosystem. And today we have Ben Goertzel on the podcast. We're going to be talking about all things SingularityNet, SDAO, Sophia DAO, NewNet. They're working on a load of projects that will interact with the Cardano blockchain and will bring value to Cardano. And we have some awesome topics in this, so I hope you guys enjoy it. If you want to support the channel, the best way you can do so is just by delegating to Bloom. We have Bloom through Bloom 6. We actually minted the 8th ever block minted by stake pools on the Cardano blockchain. So we've been here from the beginning and we'll be here till your end because Cardano will live past us all. Also, if you guys want to pick up any of my NFTs, you can purchase them from the secondary market on token.io. You can see the link to that down below. And also, if you do enjoy this video, I'd really appreciate it if you liked, commented down below, and also subscribed and hit that notification bell. 49% of the people that view my channel do not click that subscribe button. It does help me in my numbers, my career of chasing these numbers, but this is an awesome podcast. Thank you again to SingularityNet and Ben Goertzel for taking the time out of your day and come on. I hope you guys enjoy this one. But hello, thank you guys so much for clicking on this podcast today. I really appreciate it. I'm very excited for this one. Today I have Ben Goertzel from SingularityNet on the podcast with me today.
Hey, pleasure to be on your podcast again, and not that long since we last talked, but so many things have happened in the meantime. I mean, it's been a really exciting times when things are sort of developing and unfolding at breakneck speed.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, it has only been, I would say 6 or 7 months. It was either January or February, and going through your guys' roadmap, I'm seriously impressed, and I'm very excited to learn what you guys have been working on. So to give you guys, if you're new to Cardano, the timeline, I would say about 9 months ago, Singularity announced that they're going to be doing a hard fork, and they're actually going to be hard forking their token AGI, which was a token on Ethereum, to AGIX that would actually make the token, cross-platform. It could be on both Ethereum and Cardano. For people that are just finding Cardano for the first time, can you introduce SingularityNet and what you guys are working on?
SingularityNet is a decentralized platform for artificial intelligence, and the high-level motivation is AI is, it's the most important technology in the history of humanity. Ultimately, it even leads beyond humanity in some ways, and there's a lot of things needed to make AI smarter and smarter and overtake every industry and ultimately become more generally intelligent than the human brain. But among the many things needed to make AI achieve its potential, you need the right underlying infrastructure to build the AI on. And one of the very valuable characteristics to have in the underlying infrastructure beneath the world's AI systems, I mean, you want it to be secure and reliable, and you also want it to be decentralized so that it's not easily controlled or taken over by any single party. The internet gives us a fabulous example of a decentralized system. I mean, Bitcoin was the first decentralized monetary instrument out there. We need AI. We need AI to be decentralized in the same sort of fashion, or even more strongly so. And so SingularityNet was designed as a decentralized infrastructure for AIs. It allows a population of AI agents coded by anyone, put online on any computer that's on the internet by anyone, allows this population of AI agents to communicate and cooperate with each other without any central controller, and then with all the goodies in terms of security and data sovereignty and so forth that the blockchain provides. And we launched this project in 2017. We've been putting a bunch of cool AI tools out there on SingularityNet since then. The platform's been maturing bit by bit. We launched SingularityNet on Ethereum network initially because of the same reasons everyone else launched their projects on Ethereum. Like it was there. It had smart contracts that actually operated there. The Solidity language is kind of ugly and easy to put bugs in your code with it, and it's slow, it's expensive, but it existed, which is highly valuable if you want to
Yeah.
do stuff in the real world, right? And so, once I saw that someone was building smart contracts in the Haskell language, which I've been developing on since before most people listening to this were born, probably. I mean, it seemed like a higher order functional language is the right way to go if you want really scalable, secure code for the decentralized infrastructure of a global AI network or anything else. So once I found out what Cardano was about, I'm like, well, we've got to be extending Singularity in that direction, and I think that partnership has advanced considerably even since we last talked, right? And with the
Yeah.
launch of Plutus, I mean, we're getting closer and closer to being able to have a scalable, sort of low cost, highly flexible infrastructure for the world's AI by putting Singularity and Cardano together.
So, as a user, these, AI tools, is this going to be for developers, or is the average person, going to be able to use these AI tools on Singularity Net?
So SingularityNet is something that exists on the back end, and the direct users of SingularityNet are developers. On the other hand, it's a bit like asking if AWS, like Amazon Web Servers, is used by individual end users. I mean, most end users don't know AWS
Yeah.
exists in the way that they know Amazon storefront exists for buying a new pair of socks or something. On the other hand, the average end user uses an insane number of services, the back end on Amazon Web Service. So I mean, as a simple example, like we have a song splitter app as one example running that basically just takes sound files and splits them into multiple tracks. So if you want to do karaoke on the song, you can remove the vocals, right? And that actually uses machine learning models running on SingularityNet platform. So I mean, the user of the Song Splitter app, they may think it's cool that this app backends on the SingularityNet
Yeah.
platform, but it doesn't really matter. I mean,
Yeah,
what
it
they
makes
care
me think
about.
of SDAO. Like users don't realize it, but when they're using the Dynasets, that's relating back to Singularity Net. That makes perfect
Singularity
sense.
DAO is same way. So we've launched some features there. We're launching Dynasets, which are AI traded baskets of altcoins sometime in the next few months. And then if someone that they want some upgraded management of their altcoin portfolio, they can shift some of their crypto holdings to Dynasets, dynamic sets of altcoins that are managed by the SingularityNet AI agents, and that's the AI is, again, it's on the back end. It's doing the management of that basket of altcoins, and the user doesn't need to worry about which AI algorithm is being used. So this is a SingularityNet provide the agents running on SingularityNet provide AI services via APIs to products, which then get the AI from those APIs, and they can talk to each other with their APIs also, so that AIs in the network can outsource work to other AIs in the network. AIs can put their minds together to solve problems. What the end user is seeing is then apps or applications that they're interacting with and that are connecting on the back end via the APIs to the AIs running on SingularityNet. And there's a lot of aspects here, right? Like every time a user uses like Google Search or Robinhood or whatever traditional apps they use, there's a whole complex centralized tech stack underlying that, which is usually giving their data away unbeknownst to them to various parties around the world. And we need a whole decentralized tech stack to underlie the average user's experience of using products, and SingularityNet is a piece of that. Cardano is a piece of that, and there's a bunch of other pieces.
Yeah. Even, to bring it all the way back, TCP. That's what I've been learning lately about protocols and how they all really just build on top of each other and use different parts of, like you mentioned, the tech stack to make it all come together for the end product for the user.
Yep, yep.
So when someone actually uses a Dynaset, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but that's essentially like an altcoin index fund, being managed by a decentralized agent, as you mentioned. When people decide to participate in that, what currency are they going to be using to participate in that? And also, are they going to receive like a token that is essentially an example of the amount of value that they've provided to the smart contract?
Well, so Singularity DAO, which is a separate project spun off of SingularityNet and has its
Yeah.
own token, right? So there's SDAO token, which is the governance token for the Singularity DAO network, which is separate from the AGI, what's now called the AGIX token, which is the main token of SingularityNet. So that Singularity DAO network provides software that will non-custodially for the users. So it will help manage part of your altcoin holdings for you. So and a Dynaset is a dynamic set of tokens. So you could have, for example, a Dynaset containing a bunch of DeFi related altcoins, or you could have a Dynaset containing a bunch of AI related altcoins, right? And then what you're doing is you're saying, instead of just buying a certain amount of Ocean Protocol token or Aave token, I'm going to buy a certain amount of this Dynaset, this basket of tokens, right? And then the composition of that basket, the weighting, like how much of each DeFi token or how much of each AI token in the basket is held in the basket, that's updated dynamically by decentralized AI algorithms running on SingularityNet. And so that's yeah, it is formally it's a bit like portfolio management, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean you're buying a sort of a customized portfolio which is dynamically managed by AI algorithm. I mean from a legal point of view, it's non-custodial, and these are utility tokens rather than securities. So it's more like an AI managed account of non-security utility tokens, right? And then there's other mechanisms laid on top of that, so you'll be able to stake the token connoting a certain Dynaset, and then you can get rewards for this staking, which come in the form of SDAO governance tokens.
It just seems like such a, obvious use case as I dive more into cryptocurrency. I invest in multiple different tokens and then I start to think of, my family, my mom, my dad, and, them managing all of these wallets and managing like a basket of coins. And that just doesn't make sense, but
I mean,
investing in one thing and getting a
see, I don't,
Dynaset.
I don't even have time for it, right? I
Yeah,
mean, there,
exactly.
even like I know what's going on. There's a lot of cool projects, but there's ups and downs all the time, and there's new opportunities popping up. And I'm too busy trying to build
It just
a
takes so much
benevolent
time.
global thinking machine to be managing a bunch of utility tokens day by day. You want an AI to do that for you.
I agree. I agree completely. Earlier you mentioned that in the time that has passed, there is a greater collaboration between IOG and SingularityNet, and that is the AI domain specific language. Can you explain to us what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say there's a lot of collaborations between different groups within IOG and different groups within SingularityNet. So the AI DSL is one of them, and there's a bunch of other interesting stuff too, which we can talk about. So the notion of the AI DSL, which stands for AI domain specific language, is we want to have a fully fleshed out language for two AI agents running on SingularityNet platform to talk to each other and basically describe their needs and properties and capabilities to each other. So what this AI need to say, well, I can classify images or videos, I can deal with these file types. If you give me X amount of images or videos to classify, I can I can do it for this amount of money. I need this kind of compute resources to do my thing. I will take this long to solve the problem. My expected accuracy is this much if the lighting conditions are so and such, right? So
Hmm.
how does an AI agent describe itself and what it can do to another AI agent? How does a data set describe itself? So I put my DNA data online. I need to say, well, this is, DNA data gathered on this platform, RNA data gathered on this platform under these conditions at this time, and so forth. Either for an AI algorithm or a data set, you need a formal way for them to describe themselves to each other. And without that, how can one AI invoke another AI to do a job for it? How can AIs decide to collaborate with each other? And without that, you need a human in the loop to decide which AI can do which job. And we don't want a human in the loop at that plumbing level of the system. So we've been working together between some of the functional programming boffins at IOG and our AI and functional programming guys in SingularityNet to design a specialized language for the AIs to communicate with each other, which is it's not Haskell, but so far we're implementing this in Idris, which is sort of the next step beyond Haskell. So Idris is a dependently typed functional language, which has a sort of more elaborated mathematical type system than Haskell with greater flexibility. So I look at Idris now is sort of where Haskell was in the late 1990s, I would say, in terms of it's just barely gotten efficient enough to actually use, but it still is mostly an academic user base. So we're experimenting with the AI DSL now. It's not yet integrated into the end user version of SingularityNet platform, but we're hoping to roll that in along with the full port of SingularityNet Marketplace and protocol to Cardano, which should be sometime early next year. We don't have a date for it yet because there's dependencies on when various Plutus libraries are going to get rolled out.
Okay, so Idris is essentially the Haskell to Cardano's Plutus, as it is to your AI, domain specific language.
Yeah, we're using Idris now to experiment with the AI DSL. Really, it's the mathematical structures that are important. So
Really?
whether Idris is what's used for the final launch of the AI DSL is not obvious yet. That is it's the most natural candidate. That's what the current alpha version uses. I mean, we're also developing an even more out there programming language called Meta, METTA, and that's uh, even more abstract and cutting edge programming language that we're developing for the new version of our OpenCog AGI engine called Hyperon. So we're playing around with some AI DSL stuff in Meta and some in Idris. It's clear that you want to go beyond Haskell in terms of the expressiveness of the type system, but yet Haskell is much better at interfacing with this sort of more advanced language than Solidity would be, for example. I mean, if you want to interface funky AI or AGI languages like this with Solidity, you basically need to have Solidity like just communicating at a large remove from those languages. There's no easy way to make them interoperate. Whereas in Haskell, I mean, you can map Haskell types into Idris or meta types. You can set up sort of morphisms between the languages. So that there's more to go on there. And Hydra is going to be quite interesting in this regard also. And that's another thing beyond the AI DSL we've been looking at. Like, I mean, the Cardano in itself is going to be an amazing infrastructure for SingularityNet, which will increase scalability and reduce cost and let us better integrate things like homomorphic encryption and multi-party computing for scalable machine learning and machine reasoning. On the other hand, there's some things we want to do in SingularityNet that may need us to go beyond the way the current Cardano system manages consensus. And for that, we can do some specialized things on Singularity Net that then connect via Hydra with the main Cardano chain, and we've just been exploring that with some of the IOG team. Like say you want to make a swarm AI where you have millions of AI agents that are creating and destroying new AIs many times each second, right? So that has different requirements than a payment system or something.
Yeah.
But you can still do that using Plutus, which is like Plutus running on a Cardano side chain that interfaces with the main Cardano chain using Hydra. And Hydra is not quite ready for that yet, but we've been talking to the Hydra team and sort of syncing up with their roadmap. So we've got a lot of things ahead, right? So I mean, obviously now that Plutus is out there, everything becomes possible, which is amazing. This is like a watershed moment in the development of blockchain and really of IT technology overall. To have like this is the first ever smart contract language that works at large scale and low cost and doesn't totally suck, right? So I mean that's a I mean because Solidity is pioneering, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
amazing that it was out there, and using WebAssembly as some platforms do is not a terrible idea either. But like in the end, nobody really wants to program the world's banking system or the thinking machine to obsolete humanity in Solidity or WebAssembly, right? I mean, and any more than my first programming language was Basic, and Basic was cool. I learned a lot from Basic, but in the end, I didn't want to implement scalable AI algorithms in Basic, right? So
Yeah.
I think Plutus gives you the starting point, but then we have a whole bunch of steps we need to undertake, right? So I mean, the first thing, which is coming up this fall, is AGIX token just moved onto Cardano, which requires some Plutus contracts for converting back and forth between the AGIX on Cardano and the AGIX on Ethereum. I mean,
So how does that work? Do you essentially just burn the tokens on Ethereum before they come here? How does that process work at the protocol level?
it's just burning and minting.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean but so that's why we did the hard fork because you couldn't burn and mint the original AGI token on Ethereum. The smart contract didn't allow it. So now in the move from AGI to AGIX, I mean the X is for cross chain, right? So then we can burn and mint the tokens and keep track of everything in a secure way that guarantees you're not allowing the token supply to inflate beyond what it's supposed to, and you can go back and forth. And I'm in the we're starting with Cardano and Ethereum, and I anticipate before too long the vast bulk of AGI tokens will be on Cardano. But on the other hand, it is a full-featured cross-chain platform, right? So I mean, we've done a little work with the NEM blockchain before. We could put AGI on a bunch of different chains if we wanted to. And as Charles Hoskinson has said, the future probably doesn't have one blockchain to rule them all, although certainly there will be some that are much bigger than others. You're
Yeah.
probably going to see a collection of different blockchains that are specialized for different purposes and of different communities, and you're going to have interoperability among them. I mean, at the moment, I'm pretty bullish on Cardano as having potential to be sort of the 800-pound gorilla among all of those. But I think it's very wise that Charles isn't trying to push Cardano as the only blockchain because
Yeah.
I mean, again, the internet and TCP/IP protocol becomes a good guide. Like Linux is great. I love Linux, and Linux runs the majority of the internet. I don't think it's important that Linux runs 100% of the internet, right? I would love to see more innovation in the operating system space and see people come up with other out there operating systems, maybe to run embedded devices or tablets or whatever they do. Some of those ideas will filter into Linux. Sometimes it's just a separate thing, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
maybe Cardano becomes to the blockchain ecosystem what Linux is to the internet. Like it runs more than the other things do, but I mean it's an open system, and you want different networks to be able to interoperate with each other freely. Have anyway, in terms of the roadmap, having AGIX on Cardano is a start. Then once we have that, we can do staking and other sort of tokenomic things on Cardano. But then the larger step, which is likely to be early next year sometime. I mean, the larger step is moving the whole Singularity Net marketplace from Ethereum onto Cardano, and we can have both Ethereum and Cardano versions. But basically, the bulk of our effort is going to then go into the Cardano version. That requires us to put like the multi-party escrow contract and some fairly subtle things inside Singularity Net platform into Cardano, and then we're now going back and forth with the Plutus team on the right way to do all that within the extended UTXO framework, which is not incredibly hard, but it is different than how you do things on Ethereum. And I mean that's
so
one
do you
thing.
feel that the extended UTXO format is part of the reasons that you believe Cardano essentially may be the gorilla?
It's just, I mean, UTXO is just Bitcoin, right? So I
Yeah.
mean, that's not a new thing, but yeah, I think that was a solid choice, right? I mean, that was a very unadventurous choice,
Yeah.
unlike Haskell, which is an adventurous choice. But I mean, it works. It's good, and the fact that Bitcoin is kind of slow and expensive is not because of UTXO. It's because of other design choices within
The
Bitcoin. So,
consensus. Yeah.
I think that was the right thing to do. And I mean, if you there were other models you could have taken also, but that's like proven, and there's a lot of theory and practice around it. So I think that was a good choice. I think not having a bad transaction model is important. And if you look at DeFi on Ethereum, I mean, how much of DeFi traffic is Ethereum miners front running traders like in a completely blatantly fraudulent and illegal way? I mean, this sort of front running of DeFi trades is enabled by the way that Ethereum and Solidity sort of guide you to implement DeFi. I mean, not that you couldn't work around it and build a front running free DeFi system, but it would be more work the building run that's susceptible to front running by miners, and it will be even slower and even more expensive, right? So I mean the extended UTXO framework, it makes it so that the most straightforward way to implement things are also more secure ways that are not so prone to pathological behavior. So I think there's a lot of value you're going to see there. I mean, I know in the DeFi now you have MiniSwap, and various people are running into cognitive difficulties because you have to think about architect your application a little differently with
Yeah.
extended UTXO than with Ethereum. And it's true, like you need a sort of armamentarium of library functions living on top of the basic Plutus layer to make it easy for the average DeFi developer to build their DeFi applications on Plutus. But I think once there are more support libraries there, which will come in the next months, then developers will find it's easier and faster to build stuff on Cardano. But also, you find that when you follow the shortest path to implementation, you get a system that A is not so easy to hack into, and B is not so susceptible to weird pathologies like miners front running your trades and so forth. So I think the payoff will be significant, but people, I mean, since the wait for Plutus was a long time and people are excited about it, of course, people want to think, well, like Plutus is here. Now immediately we can do everything really easily. But what you're finding is like Haskell is the least of your problems. Like, yes, it's an unfamiliar programming language, but actually just thinking through the whole transaction model and dealing with the fact that all the libraries that you would like to be there haven't been built yet. I mean, that's a bigger problem.
Yeah, and that's why I asked you that
Haskell.
question, because you
Yeah.
mentioned Plutus as essentially, the start to formal languages being used for smart contracts. And, To me, extended UTXO, I know other chains have done it. Ergo's one of them, also Nervos as well. But, seeing that concurrency issue that you mentioned, arise, it made me think that, this was the start to solving, extended UTXO problems for blockchains. And that's why I was curious on if that was one of the main advantages.
I think the solutions to all these are there in research papers already. And
Really?
Charles has pointed out those research papers countless times. There's a large body of knowledge about how to do these sorts of scalable DeFi and other processes on the extended UTXO model, but not all of these academic papers have been like cashed out in terms of scalable real world applications yet, right? And now we're gonna see more and more of that, but it's not like new math and computer science needs to be done to get DeFi to work scalably on extended UTXO. It's just people need to take the time to implement the algorithms that are there in the academic literature. And frankly, the development mode for DeFi on Ethereum, most people just take someone else's code, fork it, change a few lines, and go and hope they didn't introduce anything too hackable. And sometimes they did. So you can't do that in Cardano yet because
maybe that's a good thing that you can't just essentially copy and paste it over here.
Examples to fork and hack yet. So then people have to actually design their software and think about the algorithms. And honestly, the vast majority of crypto developers who are working in DeFi don't know how to do that, right? They're really, what they know how to do is take a script and hack it and change a few lines and then put it out there. And that's you're not going to see that in Cardano ecosystem anyway, because Cardano is not as badly designed. Because you shouldn't be forking the code, changing a few lines. You should be just using a library function that somebody else created, right? So the fact that the whole ecosystem is about copy pasting is because Solidity doesn't have the right levels of abstraction in it, right? So since Plutus has the right levels of abstraction, once the ecosystem matures to create a new DeFi project, you won't copy paste and change things, which is just asking for hacks and bugs and problems. I mean, instead, you will just use abstract mechanisms that somebody else set up and write a short script that references them, right? And so, but it's going to be a process over the coming months and years for this to mature. And if you look at how like a language like C++ or an operating system like Linux developed, it was the same thing, right? I mean, in the early days, it was pretty low level, and you had to be hardcore to build stuff that would run on the early versions of Linux or the early versions of C++, because there weren't that many libraries there. And gradually the collection of libraries builds up, and then anyone can do it. From a SingularityNet view, our development team is very strong in computer science, and so we're not too worried about it, right? I mean, we're not sort of cut and paste hackers. Anyway, we mostly have a strong academic background, right? So then for us, it's not an issue, but it's I think it's going to be very important for a Cardano ecosystem to have more and more libraries built in the next 3 to 6 months, so that you can have that larger developer ecosystem that Ethereum has so effectively curated all move over to Cardano.
Yeah, that makes me think of, starting out as a stake pool operator on Cardano. We used to just use CLI commands, but all of the new stake pool operators on Cardano, they're often just using tooling. It quickly sets up the pool for them, and that's essentially what we're waiting for. But speaking of stake pool operators on Cardano, I read that you guys are working on something new called NewNet. And it is essentially, at least from what I read, a decentralized world computer that could offer services to people, as you mentioned earlier, AWS can. So can you tell us more about NewNet?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we are looking within Singularity Net at expanding our ecosystem by spinning out into separate projects and separate networks a bunch of sort of internal projects we've been incubating within Singularity Net, and Singularity DAO was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
NewNet is sort of the next in line, and what NewNet addresses in the simplest sense is getting processing power into your decentralized AI networks. I mean, it actually can be used beyond AI for computer graphics or really anything that's processor intensive, but AI is where we're starting out. Because if you put an AI agent on Singularity Net now, it's got to run on some hardware somewhere, right? And we sort of don't address that problem. We just say, put an AI agent, wrap it in a Docker container along with the Singularity Net proxy and daemon, and then it joins the global community of AIs on Singularity Net. And Bob's your uncle, right? It talks with AI DSL to the other agents once that's rolled out. But where are you running this AI agent? Are you running it on Amazon AWS? Are you running it on some local server farm? Are you running it on your own computer, connecting via like your Comcast modem to the rest of the internet? So what we want to do with NewNet is decentralize the provision of compute resources to AI. So that, again, a different layer of the tech stack, and that compute resource could be someone's Bitcoin mining server farm that's partly idle when Bitcoin is at a low price and it's not advantageous for them to mine. It could be their phone, which is sitting around idle, spinning its processors, but connected to the internet and plugged into the wall. It could be a laptop or a desktop computer. It could be a company's computers, which are sitting there idle at night when there's no one in the company doing anything, right? So the idea there is allow all these sorts of compute resources to be pulled in to be the compute infrastructure for Singularity Net. But then if you're going to do it for Singularity Net, you can also do it for any other decentralized network actually. So I mean, NewNet is it's a decentralized processing power underpinning for SNet, but it's built in a modularized way, so it could also underlie any other decentralized network. And so then you have your own tokenomic model there, where basically you get NewNet tokens for providing your computing hardware, processing power, and RAM to some decentralized network. And yeah, I think that's been tried many times before. I mean, I knew the Golem guys way back, and there's CPU coins, so it's not a new idea to do a sort of tokenomic model for decentralized processing power. But when you look at the details of how these other projects did it, they wouldn't work for running Singularity Net on top of them. And for similar reasons, they wouldn't work for running a lot of other things on top of them. Basically, the previous projects that did this, they were based more on a Bitcoin-like model where you're taking away the sort of number factoring stuff that underlies Bitcoin, and you're replacing that with some other sort of process that you want to distribute. So then solving some other algorithmic problem plays the role of mining in Bitcoin, and that's not stupid. It's kind of cool. I mean, Deep Brain Chain did that and is still doing that actually with a neural net training as mining, but it constrains you a lot because it means you can only run processes that you're pretty sure can't be gamed by someone who wants to accelerate their mining. And then NewNet sort of loosens it up a bit. I mean, the running of a process on a NewNet node isn't mining. I mean, your mining of NewNet tokens is just how much processor and RAM have you given. It's not how much of this problem have you solved.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, by taking a more flexible architecture, you get a decentralized, tokenomically incented processing power infrastructure that can be used for any decentralized process whatsoever. And I mean, this is something we created because we needed it, basically. I mean, we as just for our own AI processing, we think it sucks to be paying centralized like server farm providers
Yeah,
for
I mean, I feel the
all
same way
all
as
the
a stake pool
processing power.
operator, and most stake pool operators on Cardano are using some form of AWS, Google Cloud, DigitalOcean, and that's why I was so interested in hearing about this too, because it got me kind of thinking down the rabbit hole of could I mean, and you've really just answered my question, because it was could the Cardano protocol use NewNet nodes to have truly decentralized nodes, and as you just mentioned, that is actually what Singularity Net is doing and was the main intention of NewNet, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, yeah, using NewNet underlying stake pool operation would make a lot of sense. Also, I think for the prototype, we've been looking more at sort of lower cost operations, like things people would run on their phones. But actually, that's one cool piece. But allowing, say, stake pool operation to happen in some accounting or insurance companies' computers while they're down at night. I mean that there's more processing power there than there is in phones probably. So I mean I think the
Yeah.
heterogeneity of the idle ambient compute resources on the planet is pretty dramatic. So yeah, so this NewNet is being run by my longtime friend Kabir Vetas, based in Brussels. And when I met Kabir a number of years ago, he was doing his PhD at the Global Brain Institute at the Free University of Brussels. And so there's a quite near-term practical aspect in that we have processes, just like stake pool operators have processes that we would rather be running on a decentrally managed compute infrastructure. There's also a long-term vision aspect in that, I mean, if you want to build a global brain, which is what Kabir and I were talking about when we met in 2013 or 14 or whatever, when he's doing his PhD. I mean, if you want to build a global brain, I mean, there's somehow you need to deal with the hardware provisioning, not just the software, and you need a very scalable, flexible way to do that, right? And here again, you need a blockchain layer that doesn't get in your way by like putting in insanely long delays and high gas costs and stuff underlying it. So it's pretty clear for something like NewNet to realize its vision. Like current version of Ethereum doesn't cut it. I think Cardano is going to be a stronger candidate there, certainly, and that if we have a multi-blockchain future, as Charles Hoskinson has envisioned, you could certainly see different NewNet nodes running on different blockchains, and the same compute process could run like 80% on Cardano, and then 20% of it, which is doing something really specialized, could run somewhere else, and they're all pieced together in a decentralized way.
So how do you deal with the latency issues between that? Do you essentially, if I'm using it, do you centralize that to one node, or do you actually decentralize the same process across many nodes?
But you got to split it up, right? So there's a whole
Yeah, but
literature
then
on
latency though, would that?
well, there's a whole literature on how to deal with this in AI algorithms. So there's something called
Really?
federated learning, and there's a whole bunch of papers on how do you take the process of training a neural net and modularize it among multiple machines. I mean, latency is one issue. One issue is what if the processors are unreliable and one of them drops out in the
Yeah,
middle
yeah,
of doing something. So yeah, they're kind of similar to how to build applications on extended UTXO. Like there is a substantial academic literature on this, and there's been prototypes built doing neural nets, evolutionary learning systems, logic systems on various sorts of distributed backends with high latency and lossy processors. And of course, you lose some efficiency proportional to how shitty your processing backend is. But there's a large literature on how to modulate this reasonably well, but not a lot of like scalable practical implementations of all these academic discoveries and schemes, right? So kind of parallel to what we're seeing with extended UTXO, we need a process of taking all these beautiful academic papers and making it real,
yeah.
What does take some time. I mean, it takes years. It doesn't take decades or centuries, but it takes years as long as human brains are still involved in that process.
Yeah. Yeah. So recently you uploaded a video on your personal channel and you welcomed Elon Musk to the humanoid robotic space and mentioned that you may be joining the self driving vehicle space yourself. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, that well, first of all, that video, if anyone watches it, was just a bad joke, which was inspired by my 3-year-old son Quarksy's current obsession with Transformers. So he's got Optimus and Bumblebee and Megatron and Peleotrex. We've got more Transformers than humans in the house. So when I saw Elon Musk was launching a Tesla robot called Optimus. Now, Optimus Prime, as everyone should know, is like the king of the good guy Transformers. When I saw Elon, he's launching a humanoid robot named Optimus, and his demonstration is a human in a robot suit. I mean, I love Elon Musk. I mean, Tesla created the whole sector of environmentally responsible vehicles that people would actually want to drive. Elon is awesome. He's contributed a lot to the world, right? But I mean, humanoid robotics is hard, right? And I mean, we've been working on that with Hanson Robotics for a number of years. You know, Sony and Honda and SoftBank have tried and basically failed with various aspects of it. These guys are smart with a huge amount of engineers and a lot of money. So it's just for those of us working in the humanoid robotic space to see someone with no track record in the space come out and say, "Hey, we're going to launch something that solves all the problems you guys have been working on for decades, and as proof, here's a human in a jumpsuit." I mean, this it just seemed kind of funny.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if this car company is on the verge of launching a humanoid robot, then obviously, as humanoid robot people with the Sophia and the Grace elder care robot that we're going to run on Cardano also, by the way. I mean, sure, we can launch a car. Why not? Right? But I
It's
think
easy.
that the serious thing underlying there, of course, is, I mean, that Grace robot is doing navigation, which is the elder care robot, which is a little sister of Sophia that we're building together with Hanson Robotics and in our joint venture Awakening Health. I mean, that does need to navigate around the hospital, and that's running using neural nets and OpenCog neural symbolic AI running on Cardano platform. And we have a whole roadmap there where we have a new version of our AGI engine called OpenCog Hyperon, and in a couple of years we'll be running Grace on the OpenCog Hyperon engine, back-ending on SingularityNet, on Cardano, on NewNet. Like, we're building this whole stack for intelligent agents that do move around and interact with the world. And initially, it's robots moving around hospitals, not cars moving on the road. So I would bet on us to solve the full self-driving problem before Tesla, just in the sense that, I mean, Tesla is making awesome cars and they have a great computer vision and neural net team. But if to solve like full level 5 self-driving, you actually need full-on thinking and machine reasoning and systems that like understand what an old lady is and what a cat is and what a construction project is. If you need some real level of understanding to solve full level 5 self-driving, I mean, then we're actually working on that full-on understanding, which is perhaps needed for full human level self-driving. I don't see that Tesla is actually working on full-on human level understanding. They're really working on more sort of plain vanilla machine learning on the massive amounts of data that they've gathered, and they haven't gotten that far with full self-driving there. I mean, Google has gotten further with Waymo. So I don't think the AI that they've created so far is going to be very helpful for humanoid robots. But another feature in the robot space is getting cool demos is easy. Getting deployable systems that really work is hard. So I mean, can Tesla make a humanoid robot that goes on stage and looks cool, Probably. I mean, think about Honda Asimo. They had that going on stage, looking cool for a long time, but they eventually had to shelve it because they couldn't get to a product. So actually, a bunch of folks on SingularityNet Telegram group are endlessly pushing for a SingularityNet and Tesla partnership, which is unfortunately I'm not here to announce to you on this podcast.
Damn it, the
Although,
views.
yeah, but I mean, even though I was making fun of Elon a little bit in that video, I mean, I think we have a strong mutual respect for each other's work, and they're as well as a mutual love of having fun on social media. And so I think we we could certainly see some serious AI and hardware collaboration between our respective companies at some point in the future. I mean, I think that Tesla obviously has incredible strengths, and machine vision and the interaction of machine vision with reinforcement learning is there. But I think, with all respect, they haven't thought that much about abstract cognition and real understanding of the world, which is what we're aiming for with our own species of tech stack. And I think it baffles me that, and hopefully Elon Musk, you're watching this interview. I'm sure you follow Big Pay like everyone
He
else does.
does.
It baffles me, Elon, that you're such a big fan of Dogecoin. I mean, it's a good joke, but I mean, Tesla is not a joke car, and there's a good reason that blockchains are not a joke, right? So Dogecoin is kind of funny. It's actually not useful for anything. So I think Cardano is a real blockchain, like the Tesla is a real car, and there's a lot of engineering underlying any of these things. And humanoid robots require their own highly challenging engineering discipline and effort also.
So the one last thing I wanted to ask you: how can SingularityNet protect people in the cryptocurrency space? There's rampant scams going on. Me personally, I message, and it's not just your Telegram, but I message in the Singularity DAO Telegram, and I get 4 messages from fake moderators with the exact same picture, the exact same name, and if I wasn't in the know, that could really be negative for me. How can SingularityNet solve that problem?
There's a lot of fake Ben Gertzels out there, aren't there?
Yeah.
I mean, which is pretty funny. Yeah, and what's more worrisome in the future is, with all the data that there is about you and me and how we think, what if someone trains a model based on all our data so that the model actually thinks like us? Then they actually own a clone of you, which they've trained based on your data, right? So there's what we see now is really disturbing and fucked up, but is only the beginning of what will be possible.
And it would be very easy for you too, with all the content that you've released in your life.
Yeah, it would be. It's a bit disturbing, right? But I think if it's a tractable machine learning project to make an anti-scam that works as well as anti-spam, right? Like, I mean, Gmail does a pretty good job of anti-spam mail.
Yeah.
If you remember email from 10, 20 years ago, you got a shitload of just garbage email all the time. If you ever peek in your Gmail spam folder, you see it, but it doesn't actually filter up to you very often unless you're stupid enough to click on it a lot, right? So I think it would be viable to use machine learning to recognize scams in a similar way. There's certainly a lot of training data available, right? I mean, there's a lot of scams out there that are identified as scams. We haven't solved that problem ourselves just because there's so many applications of AI. We don't want to do them all internally. But this brings us to another interesting thing that we're doing with SingularityNet, which is the deep funding program. So we, in SingularityNet Phase 2, which is to be launched full on this fall, once we have the two-way converter between AGIX Ethereum and AGIX Cardano, I mean, in SingularityNet phase 2, we are minting a certain amount of new AGIX and Cardano tokens each month, starting with 15 million in the first month, and then decreasing by 1.5% each month, so that after 91 years there will be a billion AGIX on Cardano tokens, equaling the AGIX and Ethereum tokens that we minted in 2017. But 30% of these newly minted tokens go into what we call the deep funding pool, the decentralized ecosystem projects pool, and the community of AGIX token holders votes on which projects gets these tokens. So it's inspired in part by Cardano's Catalyst program, but it's larger percentage-wise. We wanted to put a larger percentage of the SingularityNet ecosystem into this democratically voted pool. And I would say using decentralized machine learning running on SingularityNet for anti-scam recognition is a beautiful idea for a deep funding project. Like I would give a lot of support to community members who want to solve that problem using the AI on the platform. And really the first step is to curate the training data set for the AI to use to learn its models. But yeah, I would say Charles Hoskinson should be a heavy user of this, because there's even more fake Hoskinsons than fake Gertzels out there, actually.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, it'll get to a point where, the AI scam detection's so good that it's going to ban me from all the sites, because, of Charles and of you, there are a lot of fakes. So you're going to need some sort of, signing key to get past it.
You better have good cybersecurity, because there's a duality between discriminative and generative models. So your fake scam detector could be reversed and turned into the world's best fake scam generator. So you want there's interesting security issues here also. So I mean, I think you're not going to do away with the sort of us versus them dynamic as long as you have like an open, decentralized democratic system, right? But I think as with anti-spam, I mean, the spammers are not as sophisticated as Google, right? So they're not able to really outdo Google's anti-spam. And in the same way, the scammers are not going to be as sophisticated as SingularityNet and Cardano. So I mean, after a little more time has passed and the Wild West atmosphere has calmed down just a little bit, I mean, these scams are all going to be squashed by machine learning, just like spam emails have been. But yeah, that's a much needed application, certainly.
I look forward to that day, and I want to say thank you so much for coming on this podcast. I learned a lot today, and I learned a lot last time, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been good, and it seems like an hour is a long time when we start these conversations, and at the end you realize we covered like 1% of all the interesting things.
Yeah, and like 5% of my questions
that we could have talked about, right? So I think there's a incredible number of cool things that we have at various stages of completion. So many fascinating conversations between Cardano and SingularityNet. I mean, there's two projects we're involved in which have Cardano and SingularityNet and blockchain phones in them, for instance, which I guess I can't talk about due to non-disclosures. There's so many interesting things with the Cardano-based NFTs in SingularityNet AI that are in the works. So there's really there's a huge amount of cool things bubbling up, and I think while there's a lot of work to be done post the launch of Plutus, both for SingularityNet and for building a tooling layer on top of Plutus, I mean, nevertheless, it's a pivotal, like it's a landmark moment having Plutus out there, and I think we're going to see a sort of Cambrian explosion of creativity both on SingularityNet and Cardano in the coming period. So it's a really, really fun time to be in this space.
Yeah, Yeah, I agree. Will there ever be a Sophia DAO generated NFT project?
Uh, there will be quite soon the Sophia DAO generated an NFT project. Yeah, we've been working on that quite a bit in the last few weeks. Actually, we've been sort of getting licensing and sort of formal infrastructure set up for it, and we I think we may have hired the creative director for that project as of today, actually. So yeah, we've been getting the paperwork all in place and assembling the team and sort of figuring out in what sequence to launch various things. But yeah, we're brewing a lot of cool things at the interface of Sophia and Grace robots, metaverses, online virtual worlds, NFTs, gaming, and tokenomics. And yeah, this is another thing is going to need the massive scalability and low cost that comes with Cardano platform
Yeah,
and the flexibility of Plutus language.
for sure. But thank you guys so much for tuning into this podcast today. If you made it all the way to the end, let's actually comment NewNet down below. And also, I recently saw that 49% of my viewers are not subscribed. If you enjoyed this video today and you want to see more videos like this, I would really appreciate it if you click that subscribe button, liked, and commented down below, but only if you liked it. And again, thank you so much, Ben, for coming on. And I hope you guys all have a great rest of your week.